Welcome to the We Are CC podcast. I am Mr. Poppy. I'm joined by Mr. Jared, and the big man himself, Oz. You may see us under different names. I'm realizing we have like 5 names between each platform that we're on. So we always kick things off by talking a little bit about just where the macro picture is, where Bitcoin is, and Ethereum at this point, I think is important to acknowledge. You know, one of the things, gentlemen, that I think is very interesting about this cycle so far, about this year so far, is it really seems to me that Bitcoin's price action is really muted. You know, it's not doing a lot. It is moving, but not a lot. And I think that's because all the liquidity is going into Ethereum in anticipation of the merge. But do you guys get that same impression?
Yeah, definitely. But it is sure it's a little bit boring, but it's good to see volume pick back up. I think we're starting to see a little bit of rotation. We've been like volume fell off a cliff for a little while there, but we're seeing volume pick up. Unfortunately, it's on a little bit of a downtrend with the volume kicking in, but it seems to me, and I defer to Oz because he's the actual day trader here, right? But it seems to me that there's a little bit of rotation happening out of ETH, maybe back into playing BTC. But I've been really focused on ETH, as just kind of like a retail trader myself. And if I'm an anecdote, then, for me, I've been focused on ETH, playing ETH in anticipation of the merge. But now I find myself kind of paying back attention to the BTC chart. So, yeah, that's kind of where I stand. I think it's good to see the volume kick in.
I know personally, I can say like your actions speak loudest of all. And in the last week, I did I don't know when the last time I market bought BTC was. And so in the last week, I personally market bought BTC for the first time in probably years. So, and basically I did that as like a safe hedge across the long term, because I have no clue what's going to happen and what's going on.
Well, and if you look at Bitcoin dominance, which is a measure effectively of Bitcoin's market share within the larger crypto space, it's plateaued for the past month. Effectively since August hit, it's been sitting around 40%, flirting with going lower. But so far, I don't believe it's wicked quite down into the 30s. And it has a lot of, I know that has a lot of Bitcoin traders or Bitcoin maxis sweating a little bit. Nothing about Bitcoin's dominance this cycle has been normal. It's definitely given up a lot of strength to stable coins and a lot of strength to Ethereum more recently. I'd be curious, if I started to see that ticking up, it might be like you're talking about, Jared. It might be a good time to start loading up on a little bit more Bitcoin than I have been, because I'm also guilty of the all eyes on Ethereum, excited for the merge, trying to stack some. So,
well, and I'm curious about like how much the merge has been priced in already, especially over the past couple months, because I mean people have known it's happening for a very long time, and it coming out more and more, some things people don't necessarily know about the merge, in that, it won't necessarily affect gas fees as much. From what I understand, my information could be absolutely wrong. Please correct me. And that when you've locked up your ETH, you don't necessarily there has to be another upgrade in order to be able to unlock it. And now that could have a very positive effect on the price in terms of, restricting supply a lot. And so whoever is willing to sell may see a bonus from that. Now for me, it's one of those unknown territories, and I personally back out and play a safer, strategy.
I think
sir,
Bitcoin.
what about Vitalik saying that it's not priced in? I mean, what is the justification for? I mean, I personally believe it is priced in, but what is the justification for saying it's not priced in? Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
That's a good one. Well, Vitalik is certainly a smarter man than I across the board, but it would seem to be common sense to me that it's priced in only because it's ubiquitous knowledge. Everybody knows that it's happening. So why wouldn't it be priced in?
I think,
That's
yeah, I didn't see those comments. I would guess that he would say something like that just because of the the maybe the depth of what's coming along with the merge. I don't know that most investors in general really don't get that into the weeds on the technicals anyways, right? So there's a lot that's happening with the merge besides just, hey, it's switching to proof of stake. And maybe that's what he's referring to is as people realize that they think, oh, maybe I should have gotten more ETH when it was lower.
I mean, that's fair, but and unless there's other things along with the merge and F2 that I'm not aware of, it seems like the things that people don't know as well aren't exactly positives for the change. Unless there's some things that again that I'm not aware of.
Yeah.
The thing is, a lot of people in this space, they don't really understand the difference between ETH2 and the merge. A lot of them think they are one and the same when ETH2 is really a very long time frame. Well, it's not even capped to a time frame. It's just a long sequence of events. You have stuff like sharding coming in, obviously the merge, but this event isn't necessarily going to reduce price, and it probably won't. You're still going to be paying high gas fees, and the reason why we're seeing lower gas fees or why we will is because people just aren't going to be trading on ETH as much going into the merge because they're trying to consolidate. So I think a lot of this just comes from a misunderstanding because, like you guys were saying, a lot of the day traders and a lot of the average people in the space, they don't really have time to dig into the actual technicals of it, and they don't really understand what's happening. They just know, the headline story. It's the merge.
True. So yeah, so that I guess let's maybe segue a little bit. I wanted to talk about the current macro. We are kind of creeping towards in the U.S. towards the midterm elections. We've seen the U.S. dollar index just have a nice proper breakout this week, and I haven't looked. I believe it's climbed 3 or 4% in the past 2 weeks. Does that sound right? I don't know if anyone else is watching the Dixie.
I've lost interest in the DXY.
It's easy. Yeah, you know what? There's certain things I've just found myself getting a little bit lazier than I should be about my trading habits and my researching as this bear market goes on. And that apathy is it's a common thing that you really need to actively fight against. If you want to be successful in the next cycle, you do have to put in some work now. But the U.S. dollar index, which is effectively a proxy for the health of the U.S. economy, the strength of the U.S. dollar, and it's been climbing big time. So since 11 August, it was down around 104.7. It's right now flirting with almost 109. So we've talked about it in the past, but when you look at risk assets, when you look at equities, crypto, they usually have that, not always, but often have that inverse correlation with the Dixie. So when the Dixie, you see it starting to climb, you should be concerned about your investment. It might be starting to drop. And that's definitely what we saw here. We saw a lot of selling pressure in the past week. Yeah, I think that's over 4.25%.
Yeah,
it's climbed. Yeah. So what do you think? What do you think, Mister?
yeah. No, we just hit 109 as you were saying that, Pap. So it must be the Mr. Pappy effect here going on. But the rally continues, right? We just printed a new all-time high. Not an all-time high, but a local high. Local being 20 years or so, or maybe even more than that, 20, 25 years. It's the highest it's ever been. I think that's really interesting. I've lost a little bit of interest. I think I keep more on tabs of the Doxy thanks to you, Mr. Pep, than anybody else or any other information source. But I think it really is interesting that the dollar just continues to gain strength. And I think that speaks to just global macro conditions because you have so much out there, right? You have well, I mean, if you look at the UK, they're facing double-digit inflation, I believe, right? And the Bank of England has stated that they're prepared to take aggressive moves, right? You have Asian economies also struggling, notably China is, some narratives are out there as actually, or they've been out there for years now, but everybody's kind of predicting a looming China economic collapse, right? I mean, people have been saying that for a long time, but now there are a lot of pressures on the Chinese economy. So it's weird because as an American living in the US myself, right, I'm seeing the weakness in our own local economy, but I guess we're still perceived as doing better than, maybe the rest of other global economies
Yeah.
out there.
How do you say we suck less? Maybe our
We suck
fiat,
less,
our
yes.
fiat currency sucks less. That could be our the U.S. The Fed's motto for this year.
that is
less since 1965.
So one of the things I'd done on my Dixie chart, if anyone's playing around, I mean, there's a billion ways you can look at this, but I always thought it was cool was if you draw a line extending from August of 92, there's a low on the Dixie there before it started to rally big time into the 2000s, into Y2K. You draw a support across the 90s and then across into the 2000s all the way to now, and you see the range where it developed from a support into a resistance in the mid 2000s. And so we're fast approaching that level around 110. That's what I'm curious about. And I think I've seen a few other analysts talk about that as, a lot of eyes are on that level. Is it going to reject? If it climbs over and flips that into a support, then I would be really worried about my investments.
Just to be clear, your crypto investments?
Yeah.
Yeah, and what we're seeing today is in equity markets in the US, the VIX, which is the CBOE volatility index, right? It's a measure of like fear, like the more fear, the higher the number, right? And the number is still pretty low. It's at $24, right? But it just pumped like 17.5. We're at 17.5 plus % today. Maybe that indicates a little bit of expectation that we're going to reject that.
Yeah. Well, we can all hope. I do think that, I know it's really hard to get out of that mind state when you're deep in a bear market and you expect every sell-off to turn into a bigger sell-off and turn into a big crash. And that's possible. I see a lot of that in Discord and Twitter and Reddit of everyone, now that we had a few red candles, everyone's back to the, 10K, 6K, 3K, whatever it may be for Bitcoin and ETH down to 200. Again, anything's possible. But I do see some signs in the market where I could see it pivoting around here in this range or soon. So I'm not counting, me personally, I don't know about you guys, I'm not personally counting on a big monstrous dump at this stage. If I'm wrong, you can make fun of me next week or the week after.
I mean,
yeah,
we can't make fun of you otherwise.
you can always make fun of me, but I am curious to get your guys' thoughts because this is a very, very common topic in a lot of communities right now. Between the folks that think, hey, we're on the route to at least some stabilization in the market, not necessarily a massive bull run, but some stability, and then those who expect significant downside, largely because of macro factors, potential recession, the fear about the Chinese economy. And these are all real fears. These are things we should be concerned about, no doubt.
Personally, just listening to my gut and a little bit of what I'm seeing geopolitics side, I'm more of a holdout and cautious about a bigger downturn.
You mean you're expecting one, or you're...
It's not that I'm expecting it, because I'd have to have like some reasons to expect it. It's just more, I'm erring on the side of caution and just trying to make my plays of a just in case that happens.
Fair, yeah, I think that's a very reasonable approach. Well,
I'm kind of aligning myself with that camp right now as well, because there's not many new outstanding factors. I mean, a lot of the factors we're currently facing from a macroeconomic standpoint have been ongoing since, December last year to January. or they're at least being priced in starting from that point. Obviously, you have other factors coming in now, but I mean, a lot of the stuff we got hit with at the front of the year just isn't going to come up again for a long, long time. And I think the fact that we're still consolidating in a similar range, it's kind of a good and a bad feeling for me personally. But I'm more on the bullish side here,
Yeah,
just because it feels safe.
I tend to agree with you, Oz. I think we're going to have some near-term volatility. It's going to be a little choppy this week, just as we wait for the GDP print on Thursday in the U.S. and then the homeboy Jerome Powell will be speaking at Jackson Hole on Friday. So I think markets are going to be searching for value throughout the week, and I think that's definitely going to be impacting crypto because the correlation is still quite high, right, between Bitcoin or crypto at large and equity markets. But I think what's really interesting is the consolidation that Oz is talking about, right? Consolidation is good, right? Because it forms that foundation, right? Whether, that foundation is going to be, proven to be resistance or support, I think is the ultimate question. But the consolidation is good. We're building up liquidity in this zone. We're hopefully forming some support. The things that we're seeing from institutional investments around the space, I think that's, macro bullish. Morgan Stanley just issued a report today. Although it is Morgan Stanley, right? They're kind of like the redheaded stepchild of the traditional financial firms that are commenting on the crypto space, right? They are a bit, of the weakest in that one skill set, right? So take it with a grain of salt. But what they are talking about though is based off of data. And they just issued a report that said they're seeing less institutional liquidation of stablecoins. So basically, the market cap of stablecoins has stabilized. It's not dropping as much anymore due to institutions offloading their stablecoins, right? And I think that's a good thing. We're seeing institutional sell pressure easing off a little bit, and I think we're also seeing maybe a setup for a little bit of a rally with the right conditions. But overall, my takeaway from that report is that things are going to be a little bit boring for a minute, right? But I think through the rest of the year, I am a bit bullish. Maybe I'm a bit of an optimist too. But I try to use as much data as possible to inform my optimistic opinions. So I'm in the same camp as Oz.
Well, I want to go on the record as the resident bear at this time so that I can be held accountable if I'm wrong.
No, that's awesome. I thought I was the resident bear for a little while, so it's great. You can take that. You can take that chair, sir.
You got it.
No, maybe we should do the gladiators in Rome. Anyone that gets a wrong prediction on here is kicked from the podcast.
Oh,
permanently.
It was nice knowing everyone. I enjoyed your company.
I'm gonna change my answer
to
to
about to get a new podcast.
It could go up or it could go down. How about that? 50-50.
I love it.
Yeah. So let's move on. I know we have some topics that we all set aside that we wanted to discuss, and I don't want to get too caught up in the big picture. So let's start. Let's start with Mister. What would you like to talk about this episode, sir?
Well, I just watched I had read previously Coinage's interview and kind of the breakdown of their interview with Do Kwon regarding Terra, right? And I had just watched the actual video interview, right? And so this is kind of fresh in my mind, and we continue to see all the collateral damage that the depegging event continues to, I guess, rear up in the markets, and one of those ongoing collateral damage institutions is Voyager, right? So Voyager is basically bankrupt, right? They've halted all withdrawals and they've kicked off bankruptcy proceedings, and they're actually pretty deep into their bankruptcy proceedings. Like there are actual hearings happening. I don't know what you call them. I guess, proceedings, hearings, whatever. But, there's a judge involved now, and lawyers are definitely in the game. So the piece that I wanted to talk about is it's a pretty small bit of news, but I thought it's interesting, um, that Voyager was just recently requested from the bankruptcy court to get authorization to pay out about $2 million in bonuses to employees, right? And I guess what kind of like stuck out to me here is that these employees were already well compensated in quotes, so that may I don't think that that's the news, the journalist putting well compensated in there. Somebody has referred to the employees already being well compensated. I just thought it was really interesting that, Voyager would actually try to get approval, right? While all their users are down big and they're waiting to see if they get any funds returned, that they would actually almost have the gall to ask for $2 million, which is, to be clear, that $2 million no longer belongs to them, right? They're requesting that for employee bonuses because they say that they need to retain these employees. And I think what's really, poignant here is the creditors, right? The folks that are owed the money objected to that, right? And I think what's really, really worrisome here is that I don't think that users are going to be made whole with Voyager, right? And they're still wanting to pay out these employee retention bonuses. It just kind of like, it's so tone deaf for me. But what do you guys think? Like, should they be trying to retain employees? Because I do see that side of it, right? But you do need to retain employees that have built up the institutional knowledge on it, the company's information that they've been, working with under for potentially, years. There is a value to retaining these employees so you can navigate these bankruptcy proceedings. But man, is that tone deaf? I think it's
Um,
tone deaf.
It's a lot
I,
of audacity.
I don't know. I gotta be devil's advocate here, because if they're making the claim that, like, look, if you want to get these money to these people in like a timely fashion or even done competently, we're going to have to pay competent people to do that. And that may be part of it. That kind of makes sense to me. And if I was just an employee, working in the company and doing what I was told, um, and if I see the ship going down, of course, I'm going to be like looking for another job. But if the company needs to have me to get things done, they're going to have to give me a reason to stick around. And that's going to be some kind of compensation like that. And as far as like investors losing some money, or losing out, period, it's like that was the price of making a bad call. Like, that's supposed to be like the market feedback mechanism, because when people invest in incompetent projects or malicious actors, they create a hazard for everyone else. And part of that is that, yeah, no one forced you to make this investment, and now you have to pay for your bad judgment. And I know people are not going to be happy to hear that, but that's part of the game, is responsibility in what you chose. The investments are supposed to have like some risk factor involved, and it's up to you as the individual to choose the amount of risk you want to take on. And part of what comes with that is, if you choose poorly, you suffer the consequences.
Well, think of it this way. They said that they have 38 employees. That would average out to around $50,000 per employee. I don't know how many of them are essential. I'm sure that a handful of them would be needed even to process a bankruptcy. I mean, you think about Mt. Gox at some point I guess you could hand off everything to someone, right? But until then, you have to have some sort of infrastructure resources in place.
And if you've ever worked like customer service in the industry, you're going to have to pay someone just to sit there and answer the same message every day and say, sorry, I can't help you with that at the moment. Please contact in 2 weeks. Sorry, I can't help you with that at the moment. Please contact us in 2 weeks. And like, you're going to have, otherwise people are not going to be getting any responses. And you're going to have probably when we got thousands upon thousands of people involved, you're going to have a small team of people just to filter support claims and support requests. And your inbox, your message channels are going to be flooded with that. If you have a physical location, people will be showing up physically to demand getting paid back, you know?
Yeah. And I'm looking. Yeah, I think I'm inclined to say that I would be okay with it, but I don't know how much money's at play, right? I mean, you need to pay back your investors, but my thoughts, like, I mean, there is still some sort of functions that need to be done, but 30 employees seems excessive. I'd be shocked if they needed that many to just kind of maintain for now. I was expecting more like 5 or 10.
Right. And that's the thing though, is like, yes, if it's all equal, then it's about 50K in bonuses per. But if it's not equal, then how do they determine which employees are potentially at highest risk and the higher value employees that are at highest risk of resigning? I think that gets a little bit muddy, but to kind of walk back, my initial position, I guess at the end of the day, 2 million is not that much because Voyager has already secured approval to through the court, the same bankruptcy court, right, to distribute 270 million that they hold in a custodial account at the Metropolitan Commercial Bank. That has been approved for distribution back to users. So I guess 2 million is less than 0.75% of what, this 1.9 million technically in bonuses, right, would be less than 1%, far less than 1% of what's being returned to users.
Yeah,
that's within room for error for me.
Yeah, retention stuff in any industry, especially right now, is a job seekers market still. And if you knew that your company was bankrupt, you'd be trying to leave. So, yeah, at the end of the day, I can kind of understand, even if I dislike them in other ways. I can understand the predicament they're in. Yeah, so
it is a tough one. It is a tough one. You do have business functions, as Jared was saying, to maintain. Right?
Speaking of some divisive stuff, so this was one of my favorite news headlines from the past week or two. We didn't talk about Martin Shkreli. He launched a project and he supposedly got hacked, and the hackers rugged the project through him, as I understand it. Now, this is the guy that was called Pharma Bro, yeah. I mean, he really, truly did his best to be like the most obnoxious person when he was on trial years ago. So I don't feel bad like kind of playing into that, because he really, truly came off as kind of a terrible person. But maybe he's changed his ways since prison. But in any case, so the file, did you guys see this? Like the name of the file that he supposedly opened to trigger the hack and trigger this like rugging?
Oh, God. Yeah.
Right? Like boobs and butts or something?
Yeah, effectively, yeah. I mean, I don't need to repeat the whole thing, but
that's the PG-13 version of it.
Yeah, large chest and round butt. How about that? We'll keep it PG. Yeah, so he opened this. I mean, he's a guy, I guess. He wasn't thinking. He opened that, and supposedly that's what gave the hackers or whoever access to do this. But, you get asked the question, given his background, his criminal history, which it wasn't, I believe it wasn't even the pharmaceutical stuff. I thought it was related to financial crimes.
Right. Securities fraud, right?
Yeah.
So
I think it was fraud.
Yeah, right. So for me, I think he's a proven dirtbag, right? So he's proven scum, and for many reasons, right? Whether it's the securities fraud or it's him pumping up what was it? I forget which drug. It was
I think it was insulin,
drug?
wasn't it?
Was it insulin?
Oh, maybe.
No.
I don't know.
Was it insulin?
Was it not him?
I think it was insulin, but it was for some anti-cancer drug or some age treatment drug, or vice versa. Like there was
drugs.
Whether it had foundations or not, fundamentally there was some argument as to why it was like a reasonable play to make. Like they bought this drug that they said was priced poorly in the marketplace, and that they said insurance companies are paying for it anyway. They're going to pay for this, the increase in the price, and that the increase in the price was going to go to some kind of research thing that was necessary for either cancer or AIDS. It was one or the other, kind of a play on both. There was some kind, whether it was true or not, or had some kind of fundamental foundation, there was an argument to be made from this side. But where I'm at with it is the guy's just been around so much sketchy stuff and has done so poorly to save face in any way that I'd err on the side of caution here and say, sorry, I don't have much sympathy for you. Frankly, I don't necessarily believe the hack stuff.
Right. There's the sympathy. Sure. I don't think you'll find many people that have any sort of sympathy for him. But the credibility of his claim that he got hacked, because it was his wallet that dumped his own token, right? Which, he called it Martin Shkreli Inu. The ego.
Oh, Lord.
Just the ego on this
He loves
guy.
himself.
It's not the worst Inu I've seen. Let's be real.
It's one of the best. It's up there.
I mean, I love how creative the space is at making, pardon the language, but making the shit coins out there, because boy, is there a lot of Inu stuff. I don't know what, there's something about that combination of letters that people just love throwing at the end of their shit coins.
It's because it keeps working. I remember when I saw the first Shiba Inu coin, I'm like, this is obviously such a lazy Doge ripoff. And then it freaking blew. It's number 12 right now. Are you kidding me? That's why it exists.
Yeah,
that's why
you can give the core Shiba team credit. They are working to build stuff. It's all these really just copy paste clone ERC tokens that are clearly not going anywhere, that have no budget, that have no team, that have no roadmap, that people do keep aping into because they probably search in coin market cap, they see some low cap Inu just launched, they want to get in and ride the wave, cash out.
Oh my god. But yeah, that's why you keep seeing it. It keeps working. It takes zero effort.
Yeah, but I don't believe this guy for a second. I don't believe he got hacked. I think he dumped his own token, and I think there needs to be investigation into exactly what's happening here, because come on, man. This maybe guy, somebody would click on a file called boobs and butts, right? But come on, really in this day and age, is that
his reputation? Yeah, his credibility is such garbage that good luck for him. Someone's going to be investigating this.
Yeah, no,
he is kind of
up with an excuse. Why couldn't he say that he clicked on a file that said Kim Kardashian's new sex tape? That's way more believable, right? Than somebody clicking on something that says boobs and butts. Come on now.
Well, you have to remember, he was a Twitch streamer or something like Twitch for quite a while. So he is quite into the culture. So I think he probably would have been more likely to click on a title like that than what you're saying.
You think so? Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, he's like the smug little Reddit guy. That's his kind of character.
Yeah, I'm looking at coin market cap. There's literally three digits worth of Inus. Some of them are pretty funny, but the highest ranking one I'm seeing besides Shiba itself is something called Vita Inu. Don't go buy this. It's probably total garbage. Or if it's not, then you guys can yell at me in the comments and we can talk about it. But I'm like, there's just so many. You guys, Safe Moon Inu, I don't want to say. I don't know Hungarian, and maybe it's like a bad word. Oh, there's Martin Shkreli Inu. There's one called Inu. That sounds like a winner to me. I might have to get some of that.
Lazy.
Double down.
Yeah, so if you see that many of something, maybe think about investing in something else. I mean, even if you're just investing in like micro caps and you're just trying to swing a quick trade, I mean, that Inu space appears pretty saturated already. I can't imagine there's going to be a healthy breakout on any of those or any new ones at launch. That's my thought. So On to our next topic. Let's see who is next. How about Oz, big man?
Great. All right, so this story interested me quite a bit because Samsung have been really active in the space recently, and one of the things they've just done, or one of their wings called Samsung Futures, which is their financial investment wing, they've applied to the South Korean securities or South Korean securities, the regulators for the approval to become a crypto exchange, so they can offer crypto assets through the Samsung Futures company. And I think there was like 8 or 9 countries listed there, but Samsung was the first to pop up recently. So it's quite new. And I think this is quite interesting because Samsung have been showing tons of interest in the space. They have like the Samsung 837X exhibition in Decentraland, and they've just been really active. They've pretty much been delving in everywhere with the metaverse. And now they're potentially looking to offer Bitcoin and other assets to their investors. I think that's quite cool.
And it's really interesting because for anyone that doesn't know, the way Korea works is it's very much controlled by these kind of oligopolies, right? And these oligopolies happen to be the big corporates, right? It's like the Samsungs and the LGs and the Hyundais, right? And they represent a significant percentage of the GDP of the entire country. So they have a huge amount of sway, but then they also have a huge amount of trust, right? I've worked in Asian markets for a long time, and I can tell you that, within South Korea, the brand recognition and just the loyalty and the trust that people have in the Samsung brand, it's almost it rivals Apple, right? And
Yeah,
in the
Samsung's
space
huge.
where huge, and in a space where people are really searching for trust, right? Everybody has so much fear still right now. It's I think it's the perfect move for Samsung. For me, I think hats off, like round of applause for Samsung. It is the right move to at the right time for them to make.
I
Yeah,
absolutely
I,
agree.
I think that's fair. And also another thing is a lot of people, they might not know Samsung Futures, but it's just them delving into it so aggressively and them showing interest, which is a key thing. Because now, like you said, they have so much trust, people are going to associate the crypto projects they interact with as a safer kind of experience, whether that's for good or for bad. But overall, I think that's a more positive thing. They're shining more light onto crypto products positively.
Well, overall, as a company, Samsung does seem pretty competent. Hopefully, you don't see them make a stupid play here. But I feel relatively confident that they'll be measured and wise in the exposure they provide to people, because they know that if they do push people too far into some of the less stable aspects of the crypto world, that it's going to reflect poorly on them.
Yeah, yeah, and they're already a pretty diverse conglomerate. I mean, they're in construction industry. They're one of the largest boat makers in the world. I mean, they do all kinds of other stuff. Although most
Did
of
you
us
know
know.
that Samsung, did you know
Mhm.
that they build skyscrapers, and they build heavy industry as well?
Yeah, it's just
Like
wild.
they're in everything.
And
It's
there's so
wild.
much.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of money in that space too. But this is a very calculated play from a very large. At the end of the day, a very large tech player. And I think their advantage is having that inroad with mobile devices. If they can find like a really elegant way to integrate that with their phones and their mobile experience, maybe like a better wallet that isn't like we were talking. I was talking to someone this morning about MetaMask and how awful the mobile experience is. I just can't stand it. It's great on PC, but man, mobile MetaMask. If you're listening, please, I don't know, figure crap, man. It's just
Well,
right.
yeah, and
Does MetaMask?
perfect timing again for Samsung because the I think it's a new president in South Korea, but they've taken a position. The president of South Korea has taken a kind of a lax crypto position, and there's promises out there to be more open to crypto and less strict, right? Try to nurture the ecosystem and nurture the innovation, right? You know, cough, cough, Gary and Yellen.
Hmm.
Let's take a page out of this playbook, please, for the U.S. But I think it's so well timed, and you got to wonder though how much influence Samsung had on the president's decision to be a little bit more lax on crypto regulation out there as well, because it's almost too coincidental, right? Samsung makes this big play, and all of a sudden, the entire nation is going to be much more friendly to crypto. That's an interesting. It's interesting timing, in my opinion.
And I'd like to point out that, Samsung and Apple have been in kind of a Cold War conflict forever, practically. And it's interesting to see the differences in plays, because Apple has been much more, in my opinion, correct me where I'm wrong, more resistant to crypto. And to see Samsung embracing it is very, very nice for me.
Yeah, I agree. And just to kind of cap it off, I happen to be a bit of a fan of Samsung products, right? They do have their TVs. I think they make great panels, but I've been watching them for a while, right? And Samsung's overall strategy in terms of tech does seem to be that they have been in hardcore learning mode for the past 10, 15 years, right? So the partnerships they've been forming with, Google and all the device makers out there, chip makers, in fact, as well, they're just learning how to do it in-house, right? And if you look at Samsung's phones, even though they use a competitors or another vendor's, a partner, Google's operating systems on their phones, they do skin it with their own proprietary like UI, right?
Hmm.
And they are building out this I can't remember what it's called. It's escaping me right now, but they have their own operating system. Oh, Tizen. It's called Tizen, and it looked at from for all the signals. What it looks like Samsung's been moving towards is to be able to in-house everything. Right? They already have all the core components to build their tech, whether it's laptops or TVs or phones in house, right? They're trying to come up to speed in terms of their software to go in house with that. Now they're moving into crypto. I gotta wonder if it's only a matter of time before Samsung launches, their own native blockchain if they aren't already experimenting with it. I mean, shoot, they could already be experimenting with it. They are, in fact. But I mean, you're just seeing this behemoth of a company starting to really get their big vision pieces into place. So I think the next few years will be interesting to watch with Samsung.
So let's move to our last special topic. Jared, I don't think we've talked about yours yet, sir.
That is right. I wanted to go over Canada's new crypto restrictions. All right, just dropped a link there in the chat. So Canada has passed some new laws where exchanges impose $30,000 in Canadian annual limit on altcoin buys. So let me just blast through this real quick. Canada-based crypto exchanges, BitBuy and Newton, are enforcing a $30,000 Canadian dollars annual buy limit for restricted coins for their users based in Ontario in order to protect consumers amid tightening regulations. These changes are to protect crypto investors like yourself and to make sure investors are aware of the risks associated with investing in crypto assets. Under the new changes, Ontario-based crypto traders on Newton and other Canadian crypto platforms will be subject to an annual $30,000 Canadian net buy limit on all cryptocurrency coins, excluding Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Ether, and Litecoin. Other changes aimed at consumer protection include a trading questionnaire in which the exchange is required to collect information from users about their past experience and knowledge of crypto investing, financial situation, and risk tolerance, which is required to be completed to continue funding the account and trading on the platform. Good grief. What do you guys think?
Well, first of all, thank you, Grayscale, for legitimizing Bitcoin Cash. And I guess I should be prepared for a bunch of DMs now. but it's they've legitimized BCH, and now Canada thinks that BCH is not an altcoin, and they consider it on the same level as BTC and ETH, and even LTC. I think, man,
I
that's
kind of
interesting. But
I like the BCH legitimization as kind of an ankle bite to the maxis.
perhaps, yeah.
We do
There's
see
a little
these.
bit of that.
Yeah, we do see these often paired together. I mean, I think it's like they pulled a list from like 4 or 5 years ago and said these are what people should be trading. Like, I'm surprised that we didn't see some more, popular coins. Yeah, from like throw some EOS or something on there. I don't know.
Or it's what they asked their buddies in parliament, like, hey, what are you holding? And they hadn't touched their account in 5 years, and that was kind of the aggregate.
Yeah, so I think that only applies in certain, if I remember, in certain states or whatever they call it in Canada. I'm not familiar, but
I think it is only certain provinces. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I guess you'd have to move. I did see some folks saying, well, I guess it's time to move move somewhere else. But that's kind of one of those things that even here in the U.S., I mean, the regulatory space isn't really kind to your average retail investors. We've seen over the past year with, for all the stupidity that's come out of some of these activities with like Wall Street bets and stuff. It's also done a good job of shining the light on some of the corrupt activities and, behind the scenes by these exchanges and potentially by some of their politician friends. And, it makes you think twice about where you live, and maybe it'd be better to live somewhere that's a little more accommodating and gives you a little bit more opportunity to try to change your life. I mean, for all the risk in crypto, it still promises a lot more than, say, traditional finance banking does for me.
Yeah, well, so do you guys think that this actually protects consumers? I think I can guess where Jared stands on this one. I think I know you well enough. I think I know where you stand on this one, but I'm curious to know, like Pap,
okay,
do you guys think this is consumer protection?
Well, absolutely not. Like, in the short term, some people may not waste their money as much, but in the long term, the harm outweighs whatever short-term gain there was. Like, people
What is the harm,
aren't.
though?
What is the harm in the long term?
Yeah,
Is that people never end up
in
learning.
the short term.
No. Oh, in the short term, the harm is that. I guess, so let's say propositionally, the short-term gain is that people who don't know what they're doing or who are like lazy and just gambling don't lose their money. And that's at least the proposed short-term gain. I guess the harm is that it makes things more inconvenient, and it raises the transaction cost for everyone to have more of this regulation involved. And in long term, the loss for society and for the individuals is that people never learn to be responsible for the choices they make. Like, one day, people are going to have to, you can't just keep passing off your decision making, whether it's financial, personal, whatever, to some politician. You're going to have to own your choices eventually, one day or another. It's never going to pay off, in my opinion, in the long run, to empower a politician to make those choices for you, including how you spend your money or how you invest it.
I think if I was to look at this clinically, not as a crypto proponent, but as a government, I would say yes. This, if nothing else, this will reduce the risk to investors, and I don't think. To that point, I don't think there's really a way around that. It is true. Those are some pretty tame, probably the least exciting things you can invest in crypto. Although I might say drop off the BCH, it's been an underperformer. The Litecoin has been an underperformer, but I think it has potential. Bitcoin obviously is pretty solid. I think ETH was on that list too.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this is a government that's got to decide, just like the US and everywhere else, where do you want to fall in that spectrum of risk averse and innovation, embracing? And do you want to be at the forefront of this movement? If you walk away from crypto, but another, say G10 powerhouse country embraces it, you might fall behind on that, and maybe never catch back up.
For me, I think, and Oz, feel free to jump in with your opinion,
Sure.
sir. For me, I think that it does protect investors for sure. I think that goes without question, right? Because altcoins are riskier, right? Because the volatility there is way more insane. That does mean that you are capping upside for some investors, right? The the issues I have with it are the precedents it sets, right? For regulators, for politicians to say what you can and cannot trade in,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
Sure, you
that's
still are able to
horrible.
trade up to 30K, but yeah, that precedent is dangerous in my opinion.
Well,
And
and let's
really just
acknowledge that if it's protecting the worst investors, and as you pointed out, it's also harming the better investors who know what they're doing. Like you said, it
right, the
limits
ones
their
that, yep,
upside. You know.
absolutely.
Well,
And for
there's
me,
so many questions this raises for me. Because first of all, 30K seems fairly arbitrary. Why the
Absolutely.
specific number? I mean, it's like they picked a random number, and realistically, I I don't know how fair this is saying, but if you have 30K spare to invest in altcoins, you probably could look at becoming one of the other levels of an investor that they have listed because they have different restrictions depending on your level. I think eligible investors had like a limit of 100K, which again seems fairly arbitrary. It seems like they're just picking random numbers. But, one would argue, well, why 30K for retail? Would the average retail investor even have 30K to invest? I mean, would this even protect people? Because a lot of the
Well,
people
and
in this space are only playing with maybe $1,000.
that
It's
could
kind
be
of an
just
odd choice.
that could just be like a creep factor. They pick something that people are not going to react to get some regulation on the books that they can go back in the future and modify the way they want.
Yeah,
Well,
like they can slowly edge it in.
in
Yep.
you,
well, three is a prime number, guys. So
Ah,
It's a
Illuminati
good choice.
confirmed. Food for thought. I know we forget this as crypto guys and ladies, but typically non-crypto space, there are a lot of restrictions on what you as a retail trader can do. Using the US, we'll say the land of the free, but not when it comes to investing and trading. For example, if you want to day trade, and there's a very strict definition according to the SEC in the US on what a day trade is. If you want to day trade, you need to have at least $25,000 in your trading account. If it dips under that, then you need to plus it up, and until you do, you won't be allowed to trade. Now, day trading, the definition varies even by the broker. So the SEC sets a baseline for what a day trader is, but your individual broker might have different definition. Like there's just like layers of complexity. But that $25,000 or $30,000, I guess, in Canadian dollars sounds very similar to me. That the governments apparently in North America look at that as like you're somewhat financially stable if you have that much spare cash, I guess, that you can throw into investing.
yeah.
yeah,
Well,
so I
I
guess
mean,
we'll see where this all nets out. For the free speech side of things, right? And like you're saying, Pep, it's already no longer free speech. But if you look at market dynamics, right, and market dynamics in terms of equities, at least, it's designed in a way where at least the narrative is oftentimes it goes like this, right? Where your your opinion, right, on the quality of a certain market or a certain commodity or a company, their ability to succeed in the future or not succeed in the future, that opinion of yours can be translated into dollars. So you're now deploying your dollars, your fiat, you're deploying your capital as a statement to the market saying, I believe this. And for me, there is an argument to be made about that being speech, right? It is your right to say and broadcast to the market what you think is the thing, right? And to overly regulate that, in my view, that form of speech, it goes counter to the narrative of a true free market, the freedom of speech, and the sovereignty of the individual and their choice, right? And so from that perspective, I really don't like when I see things that are so specifically regulated like this. And sure, if there was a more broad regulation that kind of applied to maybe multiple asset classes and it was designed to protect all investors, right? But here we're just singling out a certain type of an investor in a in a relatively small market, right? Which is the crypto space, right? It is still relatively small. It just reeks of, you know, that
Well,
suppression of speech
yeah,
for me.
yeah. Well, and what if you just it is also getting to where they're picking the winners and the losers. Then of course that's what a state wants, is to have that power to essentially, and because they can go to cryptos and say, okay, you're going to add this feature, or you're going to do what we want, or else you're not going to get the blessing of the state. Like that's exactly what this is.
Well,
Right,
yeah.
influence, censorship, all that, exactly.
Well, and like, okay, so the counter proposition, you could say like, oh, well, they've got to do something. Okay, here's one thing they could do. They could say, uh, you cannot trade crypto unless you sign such and such statement and file it with the government. And such statement says, I'm a big people now, and I get to do it. I will choose whatever I want to do with my money, and I will own the responsibility for it, or I won't trade crypto. you know
Yeah. But
or
you,
or you could say, sign me up for holding my hand, because I'm not responsible to choose what to do with my own money, and I want you to protect me. Like, that's easy peasy. And then that way, if someone loses their money, you say, oh, well, here's your name on this contract or on this document saying you accepted the risk. you know
yeah, but you have to I guess the counterpoint to that, and this is where we're going to see a lot of friction between crypto and the government, and maybe even perhaps traditional brokers and such, is that virtually every other type of investment opportunity has a fairly robust regulatory infrastructure built around it, except
and
crypto.
that should be drastically pulled back as well. Absolutely, because we see like a lot of the same problems we see in society are from those same things, where they get to pick the winners and the losers. And you
Mm-hmm.
get entrenched interests, and you get lobbyists that keep a status quo in place that serve their own interests, instead of having actual competition in an actual marketplace.
Now, it might be that crypto is kind of that catalyst that now that people have gotten a taste of what it's like to make some money, whether it was meme coins or even just traditional investing or crypto, maybe that's the catalyst to get them to start voting for people that are more supportive of financial sovereignty, financial independence, and more freedom in investing. So it's going to take time, the way I look at it, right? Nothing
Yeah.
will happen overnight, and I think until it could be a decade or more until we could achieve something like that. I think it's
Yeah,
just
I
be a lot of
totally agree.
friction.
Yeah,
Hmm.
definitely a lot of friction, and the friction is healthy, right? Because that's how these opinions get formed into policy. I just worry that there's not enough friction right now, right? That these decisions are being made in closed door meetings with a small group of people that may not be well informed. And what worries me is the precedents that are being set today will be built upon and snowball affected through the
Yeah.
next a decade or two, right? And that final form of regulation that we're talking about in 20 years' time will be built on the back of precedents that are set today. And I don't know what that looks like, but I do know that if you can be sure of one thing, it's that politicians are rarely right, and that
Yeah.
politicians rarely follow through on their stated intent, right?
Well,
But hey, guys, isn't that what we're trying to do here? Isn't that what we're trying to enable, that financial sovereignty? It's about leveling the playing field and opening up accessibility that typically has frozen out a lot of market participants from the traditional financial markets. And in that way, the regulators are choosing who wins and who loses, who gets to participate and play this high
absolutely.
stakes game.
It
And
it
if that's what we're trying to change here, then this is a problem. because this precedent's not, and it's not just this one, right? There are tons of other precedents that have been happening over the past couple few months that are starting to undermine the kind of lofty, ideals, the lofty vision of what crypto is supposed to do
It
for the masses, right? The mainstream, the Joe Blows.
it absolutely blew me away to learn that you had to qualify to have and show you had so much money and qualify as an investor to in order to be able to be for other people to try to sell securities or new opportunities to you. Like there's there's an actual like financial status you have to meet, and once you hit that, then you get these opportunities that everyone else doesn't get. And I get like the marketing, the political marketing is that, oh, we're protecting people, but you're also, it's just as much limiting them from this greater opportunity as well. Like that falls absolutely to hell to me. And and I never had cause to learn that until I got into crypto, until I got into investing and trading and things like that. And otherwise, I could have gone my whole life and never learned that was the status quo in the U.S. I thought like there's such a like a cry for equality and things like that, especially with financial opportunity. There's like there's no way something like that could be the case, but it is. That's the world we live in right now.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not always as free as we like to think. So for our last topic, and then I think we will go into Q&A. This one was requested at the beginning, actually, and I did comment on this on Reddit earlier in the week because I think it's treading a thin line. So the post was the title was "Be careful, DCA is not a sound strategy in most crypto cases," and then this guy goes on to outline why it's not. And I think you could sum it up by saying, like, yeah, okay, there's definitely a grain of truth to that when you look at it from the perspective of most crypto cases. If you go and get the Inu that we were talking about, or some of those other, watch Inu like Moon now, but you get some of these like obscure coins that are like microcap that that the developer creator like ghosted 6 months ago, but maybe you didn't realize it, and you're aping into it every 2 weeks or something as part of your DCA. That stuff's that's probably not going to go anywhere. You do the most important decision you make with a DCA, if it's a long-term DCA investment horizon, is choosing the right projects and understanding market trends and understanding the big picture too to maximize your returns. In a bull market, almost everything does pump, but that's not a guarantee, and that's not always going to be a guarantee. You got to be selective there. But I think it's I don't know what you guys think. I think it's a bad idea to just kind of come out swinging heavy against DCA. I think most people that are in crypto would probably make more money just by DCAing into some more tame, either like Bitcoin or some of the market leaders, like top 10, top 20 projects. And
right, the majors or the blue chips, right? And hey, I think that that comment's not off base personally, because maybe that's a little bit of our fault for contributing to that. Because for me, we say this all the time, right? Just DCA. It's the easiest way to do it. It's, for the folks that aren't looking to do that heavy research and time the market, it is the best play for that kind of passive investment strategy, right? But for me, whenever we talk about DCA, what pops into my head is really we're just talking about like BTC, ETH, right? The top tens, the majors, maybe some blue chip alts, and maybe just a small, tiny handful, a single handful, maybe, of the non-blue chip alts out there, the altcoins, right? And maybe that was my assumption, that when we say that the DCA is a great strategy, the assumption, the implication for me at least, when it comes out of my mouth, is as long as it's a sound project, as long as there is active development, there's a roadmap, there's a team, right? There's there's actually a reason to believe in this, and you have reason to believe that it will deliver on these goals and ultimate vision. That's the caveat that maybe we've never said on the air. Like we're not ever saying DCA into everything. That yes, that's a bad strategy. I totally agree with that. Do not DCA into like the bottom 100 or like the 100 top 200 to 300, right, in market cap. Like just don't do it. Unless you
Uh,
have researched the hell out of them and and you have a thesis on why they will succeed because you understand the technology and the team. Unless it's that kind of investing in DCA strategy, I do tend to agree with it for the most part. 99% I would say it's a bad idea. DCA.
I'm with you on this, Mister. I think you could add some more nuance to the post, but in general, it really helps to challenge us to clarify what we mean when we say DCA, because there are a lot of implicit assumptions that we don't necessarily go into the nitty gritty of. And part of that is, at least for one side of it, is DCA, but absolutely follow up and look at the feedback on how your project's doing, and if it's just unless the fundamentals research you've done on it have to justify staying into it if it's doing very poorly for over time. So I appreciate the post as a just basically challenging us to be clear about what we mean when we say DCA. It is absolutely not a pick any project DCA and you'll be okay. That is absolutely not the case. There is more involved.
Yeah, when I launch Poppy Coin, that's your DCA target right there. Financial advice.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. Before Reddit bans me from doing these again.
And now someone's going to launch a Pappy coin.
Poppy coin. I mean, you could launch a Pappy coin if you want, but that would be funnier. Yeah, maybe. It'll be like what's that one we used to tip all the time? It was you remember that one, Oz? I think they banned it from Discord, from RCC Discord. Captain, that's what it was.
Yeah, love Captain. I'm like
it was worth nothing, man. Yeah, I think I'm a billionaire in Capped. Yeah, so let's move on to some Q&A. Let me see. Let me refresh this. So if you got any questions, this is a great time to ask the Three Stooges and Poppy. Does that joke even work anymore? Yeah, probably not.
That is definitely boomer class.
Yeah, I'll think of something better later. Something that resonates with Oz's generation.
The Three Stooges. Is that a dam in China or?
Oh Lord.
Nice. Let's see. What's the deal with Tezos and Polkadot? Interesting choice of those two. Well, I don't know. Let's ask our resident Tezos guy. What's going on with Tezos? Non-chill is a question in the in the Reddit. I'm wondering anything new.
What's the context? I mean, in general, there's a lot of.
Yeah, there's just now. What's the deal with Tezos and Dot? I don't know what's going on with either, to be honest. I just occasionally buy some artwork on Tezos, and I don't use Polkadot myself.
Yeah. So let's see. There's a lot of. All right. So our biggest thing is on-chain governance, and we upgrade roughly every 2.5 to 3 months. That's been doing wonderfully. We've done that 10 times so far. And our current path is like rapid scalability. And so it's been going great. We just implemented transaction optimistic rollups on chain. In the next upgrade that should go through mid-September, we're getting smart contract optimistic rollups. And then in the future after that, we'll be looking to implement zero knowledge rollups. After that, we've also got Deku is something else that's coming. I think it's going to go live in the next upgrade, and that's basically a side chain. So layer 2s scaling, and of course with because we can upgrade so regularly, there's always some efficiencies and things like that we bring into the chain. So those are the big things happening with Tezos right now.
Nice. Yeah, I saw some commentary, and I've said this before, the one thing I always like to encourage people to do is to check out the Tezos art community. I think it's authentic, it's genuine. It's a lot cheaper than ETH as well.
Our NFT community is, and the art community in general is absolutely just, it is entirely unique. If you're interested in art and NFTs on blockchains, you absolutely have to check out Tezos.
Yeah, actually, you just reminded me. Mr. Mister's PFP on the Reddit side is something I gifted to him from Tezos. I think it was like you've probably seen it as like DOS
Because I
punks.
thought I borrowed it, but now I own it.
You might, unless it's worth money.
On the record.
If it's worth money, give it back.
Actually, Oz, you reminded me, and shame on me for not remembering to talk about this. Tezos has more music NFTs on it than any other chain, from my understanding. Yes. And actually, you can head here. This team, DNS.xyz, is really doing a lot to build out a front-end music player, all of that, to curate a lot of the individuals. And so, yeah, check that out.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I saw a few questions like this. Actually, folks are asking about specific coins. Maybe we should, we've talked about it before, but set up a separate stream through the week where we give time to specific projects and charts and talk maybe a little bit more in the technicals. That would be
nice.
That'd be fun. I know it's something that Mr. X wants to do. His schedule's not as friendly on today or on Mondays. So let's see.
One of the other focuses Tezos right now is we do have a very baby stage DeFi world that's growing. So that's another one of the big focuses for us. We just had Bittrex list some of our tokens, contract tokens, things like that. So
yeah,
good stuff come there.
I'll be honest, I have explored it, but the DeFi space in Tezos to me was just a little bit too
it's still growing. Yeah,
it was just not there yet, but that would be cool. I think by next cycle you're going to see some of these chains presumably like they had just kind of the early stages of a DeFi space really start to break out. I'm thinking of stuff like probably like Algo, Tezos, Dot, Kronos. All of those had some measure of DeFi along the way in the past year, but not nearly on the level like we would see with BSC, obviously Ethereum. Those are your top two always. And probably, I think Avalanche and Solana got a decent head start, but never quite caught up to the big boys. I just want to
forget Polygon.
Yeah. Well, Polygon definitely, did well. I got to give a shout out to this friend of ours. Was it Ismer Shellect? Can't say the name, but they say they love to just listen and browse cat pics. I dig it. We have a cat cafe near me that I've taken the wife to. It's pretty cool. Let's see. What about Squid? I don't know what you're talking about, but you mentioned Squid Grow sounds like a scam. Squid anything's a scam. Let's just say that.
The first statement.
All right, here's a question. Are you guys familiar with this? I haven't heard this. Ledger is saying their devices aren't supporting the new Ether after the merge. I'd have to look that up, but I would have to assume that Ledger's priority is to support the primary chain, which will be whichever one Vitalik is and the foundation is working on.
What do they mean by new?
Yeah, that's the part that I'm not sure about. So when I think new,
they're referring to the proof of work versus proof of stake, because what a lot of people are, or I presume is true, is that you're going to have two variants of ETH in your wallet. You're going to have obviously the active proof of stake chain, and then obviously the proof of work variant. And some exchanges, like I think BitMEX, they're actually listing the proof of work token, which will obviously be the more extinct coin going forward. But some big exchanges are actually accepting both variants of Ether.
Yeah, and there's some other weird stuff that's going to happen with the ETH merge. We really should just do a special section
there's
on
a lot
that.
to delve into.
I think, yeah, it almost deserves like its own separate thing. You know, it'd be great is if we could get someone from the ETH Foundation on to do a little bit of a Q&A on it. We'll reach out to the team on that. Let's see.
Can I just refer to this comment really quickly on Reddit?
Go for it.
From Jano. He talks like he's an employee of Tezos because he effectively is, kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, he's Tezos representative on Discord. That's pretty much his job, or part of his job at least. Sorry, is representing them.
I think I do a pretty good job of being objective, and I'm happy to hear feedback about that.
Yeah, someone asked if they bought 5 Bitcoin from AliExpress. Is it a pump and dump? I'm not sure if they're serious. So AliExpress is just like kind of like an Amazon type website. I think it might be from China. I'm not sure. I don't know that you can buy crypto there. I would just say if you don't have the Bitcoin in your wallet, you may have been scammed if you're being serious. Or you can buy some pretty nifty looking physical Bitcoins there. Those look cool. $7, get yourself a Bitcoin. This person managed to find yet another dog coin, Tamadog. I'm not even going to look it up. I'm going to assume it's going to be a quick pump dump and we'll never see anything from it again. Is that unfair, guys? Am I being...
I think that's pretty safe.
Based.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's keep moving. Luna Classic, something we haven't heard about in a while. This guy's or lady saying that in September is going to be a burn on Luna Classic from 6.9 trillion to 7 billion. Okay, we need to look that up to see if that's actually a thing.
Burn.
That is a massive burn. I don't believe it.
It won't do much though. I mean, the inflation there is already incredible. You're going to need a lot of these burning sequences to.
Yeah,
really
but did you?
Dent.
I mean, think about that number, 6.9 trillion down to 7 billion. If that's what they're saying, would be a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah, that would be huge, but still 7 billion.
True. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to pick up any Luna anything at this point, but we'll look into it. It could be interesting. Meat Spirited said to stop selling. So I just want to go on record. And if the market starts to go up, you found who to thank for it. Let's see. Yeah. Tuesday Pump Day. Yeah, Tuesday Pump Day would be great. All right. So help me out. Anything on the Discord side? I think I've...
Oh, did we lose Oz?
Not seeing anything.
Maybe we did. Yeah. Okay. I think I've walked through everything I see on the Reddit side. There's some fun comments. And Discord, yeah, I think we're... is Tornado Cash still accessible if you go direct to the contract itself? Is it just the front end that's down, or is the whole thing like...
I think that, from my understanding, the contract is still accessible, but be careful. You're still getting, and it looks like it's growing, more consequences for interacting with it, let's say. So depending on the address you interact with it, that address may get blacklisted from other... It could even possibly, don't take this to the bank, do your own research, but nodes may not process your transactions, things like that. Like, there's some downstream consequences of this that are very uncool.
Yeah.
But that just kind of speaks to one of the strengths of DeFi or, blockchain-based technologies is the censorship resistance that is inherent, right? You can you can censor the front end, right? You can censor websites. You can make sure that ISPs or hosting providers don't host the website anymore. But that smart contract is an open source piece of code that lives on the blockchain, right? And in that way, that is super cool, right? But yeah, in this specific instance, I would have touched that contract with a 10-foot pole.
Yep.
Yeah, there are other mixers out there, and I'm not familiar with them. I've read about them from time to time, including on Bitcoin. The only time I hate to say it, but the only time I really see anything about them is when they're talking about like, oh, someone got hacked or whatever, and the hacker's moving funds, to this mixer to withdraw their funds. But there are real use cases. It's just that's the only time I see anything about it, sadly. Maybe I'm just too privileged, I guess.
I wonder if there were a mixer out there that successfully, let's say, or at least did a good faith effort to find bad actors and not allow their transactions, if that would have been left alone by state action. I'm just curious. This is a question that comes to mind.
There's also a competency hurdle there.
Oh, absolutely. That would not be the easiest thing to do, but yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's all we got for this week. Although I am going to do, I got to say, because I thought it was fun, if we're going to, let's end on this note. I went to my first in real life crypto event, and honestly, I think I want to encourage more people to do it. It's become such a de facto thing to like hide behind a pseudonymous, anonymous avatar on Discord and Twitter, and I don't know. There's something really nice about sitting down with people in real life and just talking about crypto stuff. I think it's
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm glad you had fun, dude. It's something else to really be able to connect at, we're connecting right now, and we're connecting, with hundreds, thousands of folks, right, virtually. But it's something else to just look at someone in the eyes, share that passion, right, and just shoot the shit, talk shop.
Yeah, I had a chance. I went to a Goblin Town event, which that was fun. But then I got a chance to go to there's a Web3 gallery. So for those of you into NFTs, there's a Web3 gallery in Manhattan, in New York City, and I got a chance to chat with the team there. And those guys were really knowledgeable, really cool. Had lots of fun stuff. Lots of fun NFTs to look at, and a lot of, we'll call them normies. My wife included, were like appreciating the art. Like she nice. like I saw people there that were just like, wow, this is an NFT, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, man, this is the kind of exposure that we need to get, just walking down the street in the middle of Manhattan and you see this gallery, you walk in and like, wow, this is cool art. And this is part of crypto, really? Wow, okay. But I also hit them up to see if they might want to do an AMA. So I don't know, be cool to get them on here maybe, if folks are into that.
Always be closing, Pat. Always be closing.
trying to get some more good content for everyone. All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap up here. It's been fun, gents. Love talking with you. Love talking market. So I hope everyone has a good week. Safe trading, and we'll talk to everyone next Monday.
Thank you so much.
Have a good one.
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 Thank you so much.
Have a good one.